The idea here is that we are going to learn about the command line interface and the shell. Okay, I somehow activated annotations. I need to get rid of this line. Sorry. So the command line interface and the shell. The idea is that we should look at a command line interface and to look a bit about what a shell is and why and when you should use it. And that is what we are going to do here. And this is one example of a shell, not from Linux, I believe. This is from Mac, I think. But that is also how a shell could look like. And this is how it might look on a Linux system. This is my desktop at home. And any of those shows how a terminal window will look. And in this case, this shows logged into Tetralit from a Mac. And this is how it looks when you are logged in to Tetralit from a Linux computer. And inside the terminal, there is a shell running. And which shell it is, it kind of depends. But as Rebecca just said, we are going to use the bash shell in this case. And it doesn't really matter, but since there are some commands where it matters, so that is what we're going to use here. And you can see the prompt. It's blinking usually when you have a live shell open, and that means that it's waiting for user interface. And this example, it shows how you let a user interact with the computer system by typing the commands directly, and that is different to how you would do it if you're using a GUI or a graphical user interface. Here you use only the keyboard. You're not clicking with a mouse or with a touchscreen. So you can only use the keyboard here. And the command line interface is actually not just available on Linux, even though that might be what you usually think of. It's also available on Windows and it's available on Mac OS. And Unix and Linux are not quite the same. There are some minor differences. Linux developed inspired by Unix, I guess, but they all have command line interfaces. In Unix or Linux, the prompt can look different depending on the shell. It might look like this here, the $sign. It might be a percentage or a hashtag or this larger than. You can see here that it is a $sign. That means it's the shell or the born shell or the born again shell, the bash. And what you are used to maybe is a GUI, a graphical user interface, and that is what we have here. I can click around with a mouse in my browser. And the GUI in many cases are more intuitive. If you're a new user, you can do many more things with the command line interface. It's much more powerful. There's usually commands and features that you can access through the command line that you cannot access through the GUI. And many repetitive tasks can be very tedious to do in the GUI, and you can then easily automate it in a shell with a command line interface. And command line interface will be short and CLI. So, shells. As was mentioned by Rebecca, the shell is an interface between the keyboard and the computer's operating system. So it takes your input, the input from the user via the keyboard, and sends it to the operating system, the OS. And that then performs the actions you request. As mentioned, we will focus on bash. There are many alternatives, and the commands can look quite different. And Bash is both a command line interpreter, providing a CLI, and it's also a scripting language. When you write scripts in a shell, you automate repetitive tasks or you combine several tasks, which means your workflow will be faster and more efficient. For instance, you may have many files and you may want to iterate over them, and you can easily do that in the shell. Note in this material here, most or many commands are prefaced with either the $sign or this here, which is what you get at the various centers. For instance, here, this is my username at Tetralit, and then there are a number of login nodes, 1, 2, 3, and then the directory you are in. That prompt is from the computer system. $sign is just the default bash prompt. The others depends on, as I said, where you are logged in, what directory you are in. In Tetralit, this here is how it looks in the subdirectory exercises under my home directory. But on Tetralit, it only shows the topmost or the most recent directory. At some centers, for instance, HPC2N and also my home computer, it will show the full path, so it can become very long, which is both advantage and disadvantage because it means you can easily see where you are in the system, but it also takes up much of the space, so your prompt may start all the way over here. When you copy code snippets, do not copy the prompt. It should not be included in the command. So that's just what I wanted to say with this. Terminology. You may hear words such as shell, terminal, console, and command line interface. What's the differences? Or are they interchangeable? The short answer is a terminal is a text input-output environment. A console is a physical terminal, but people still use it for a terminal. A shell is the command line interpreter. There is a slightly longer answer here that you can click and read. Now, you have a terminal open on your own system, on Tetralit, on some other system. If you need to log in, do so. If you don't, I am going to assume you have, because we hopefully got the system set up. You got the tarball downloaded and unpacked. So let's try and see what happens if I say ls. ls lists files and directories. We will come back to it very soon. You can create a file with touch. We will also come back to that. You can call it anything. It is now there. You can create a directory. It's there. So this is just a few commands. It's just to get a teaser for how things work on the command line. We will go into detail of these commands in very short time. Actually, the next section. So what happens? There are a number of error messages. If you mistype something, you will get an error message. Maybe you wanted to write ls, but you hit the wrong key and you typed ks. Then the system will tell you this command I don't know, so command not found. And it might look different depending on the system. Here I am, see if I created this directory or not. I didn't, so I'm going to create it. This is on HPC2N. And I'm going to show you that it looks slightly different there. You can see there is a different name of the node. And there's a difference in how it shows where you're located. It shows the full path from your home directory, whereas here it only shows the most recent directory. Let's go ahead and go up, and I'm just going to go and grab this command here again. And I'm going to also download it here, just so I have more to play with. Now I'm going into exercises, and here you see what it was I mentioned. It shows the most recent directory here, whereas here it shows the full path. So a difference. Okay, we talked about error messages, and I'm going to return to that now. If you instead execute a command on a file which is not available or not accessible because of permissions, which we'll talk about, it will look something like this. So let's say I wanted to list a file to get some information on it. Doesn't matter there. I typed I cannot access it because there is no such file. And this is how it looks when you're trying to access a file that does not exist or which you have not permissions to. It might be the file exists, but you may not list it. Permissions we will come back to. Key point here was a shell is a special user program. It's an interface between the keyboard and the operating system. It takes input from the user, sends it to the operating system, the OS, which then performs the actions requested. We'll use bash. You can run programs from the shell by entering commands at the command line interface or CLI. There are many advantages to using the shell. There's the ability to automate repetitive tasks and combine smaller tasks in a script. There is also the speed of executing commands compared with more resource-intensive GUIs or graphical user interfaces. The shell is also easier to use remotely. Say maybe you are just logging in a small terminal window to some remote system, for instance, an HPC center you are using. It's easier and faster to just use the shell than it is to open a GUI through that connection, especially if you don't have very much bandwidth or fast connection. There are difficulties with the shell, of course, that are how do I figure out what commands exist and how to run them? But we will work on that.